Uncharted Intelligent Tier List. Let's start. First up, we've got Harry Flynn in the average intelligence tier. Now don't get me wrong, Flynn's got his moments, but let's be real, he's not exactly the sharpest tool in the shed. Flynn's your typical mercenary. Good with a gun, decent at climbing, but not much going on upstairs. Remember how easily Nate and Khloe manipulated him in Uncharted 2? That's not exactly the mark of a strategic mastermind. His plans usually involve shoot first, ask questions never. Flynn's the guy you want on your team for muscle, not for solving ancient puzzles or outsmarting the bad guys. He's solidly in the average intelligence tier. Moving up a notch, we've got Nadine Ross in the somewhat intelligent tier. This lady's got more going on than just being a tough mercenary leader. She runs Shoreline, a successful private military company, and that takes some brains. Nadine's smart enough to know when to cut her losses, like bailing on Rafe when things got too crazy. She can hold her own in conversations about history and artifacts, showing she's done her homework. Nadine's not just brawn, she's got a decent amount of brain too. She falls into the somewhat intelligent tier, a definite step up from our boy Flynn. Now, let's talk about everyone's favorite cigar-chomping mentor, Victor Sully Sullivan. This guy's definitely earned his spot in the intelligent tier. Sully's not just street smart. He's got a sharp mind that's gotten him out of more tight spots than we can count. Think about it. He's been in the treasure hunting game for decades, and you don't survive that long by being a dummy. Sully's got an encyclopedic knowledge of history and artifacts that rivals even Nate's. He can spot a counterfeit from a mile away and has connections all over the world. But what really puts Sully in the intelligent tier is his ability to read people and situations. He's always thinking 3 steps ahead, whether it's in a negotiation or a firefight. Remember how he played Marlo and her goons in Uncharted 3? That takes some serious mental acrobatics. Plus, he's smart enough to know when to trust his gut and when to trust Nate's crazy ideas. Sully's intelligence isn't just book smarts. It's a perfect blend of knowledge, experience, and good old-fashioned common sense. Moving on to Elena Fiser. Elena's got a quick wit and sharp instincts that serve her well in both her journalism career and her adventures with Nate. She's resourceful and adaptable, able to think on her feet in high-pressure situations. Remember how quickly she picked up on the complexities of the Shambhala mystery in Uncharted 2? That's not something just anyone could do. Elena's intelligence shines through in her investigative skills. She's got a knack for connecting dots that others miss. She's also smart enough to be skeptical, often questioning Nate's far-fetched theories, which, let's face it, usually turn out to be true. But still. What keeps Elena in the somewhat intelligent tier rather than bumping her up to intelligent is that she sometimes lets her emotions cloud her judgment, especially when it comes to Nate. But hey, who can blame her? Overall, Elena's smarts are more practical and grounded than some of the other characters, which makes her an excellent counterbalance to Nate's more academic and sometimes far-fetched ideas.
Khloe Fraser, who definitely earns her place in the intelligent tier. Khloe's not just a skilled driver and treasure hunter. She's got some serious brain power under that messy ponytail. First off, her ability to plan and execute heists is top-notch. Remember how she masterminded the museum break-in in Uncharted 2? That takes more than just guts. It requires careful planning, quick thinking, and the ability to adapt on the fly. But Khloe's intelligence goes beyond just being a good thief. She's got a deep understanding of history and mythology that rivals Nate's. In Uncharted: The Lost Legacy, she demonstrates an impressive knowledge of Indian history and Hindu mythology. This isn't just surface-level stuff either. She can connect historical dots and solve complex puzzles that have stumped scholars for centuries. It's like watching a sexy Australian Indiana Jones in action. What really sets Khloe apart, though, is her emotional intelligence. She's incredibly perceptive when it comes to reading people and situations. She knows exactly when to push, when to back off, and when to crack a joke to diffuse tension. This skill has saved her skin more times than we can count. Plus, let's not forget her ability to play both sides, like when she was working with Flynn and Lazarovich while secretly helping Nate. It takes a sharp mind to keep all those plates spinning without getting caught. Now, let's shift gears and talk about Gabriel Roman, who lands squarely in the somewhat intelligent category. At first glance, Roman might seem like your typical sophisticated villain. He's got the fancy suits, the British accent, and a taste for fine artifacts. But dig a little deeper, and you'll see why he doesn't quite make it to the top tier of Uncharted intellects. Roman's got a decent grasp of history and archaeology, which puts him a cut above your average treasure-hungry bad guy. He knows the value of what he's looking for, and has enough smarts to hire experts like Navarro to fill in the gaps in his knowledge. This shows a certain level of self-awareness and strategic thinking that you've got to respect. Plus, he managed to build up a significant criminal empire, which isn't exactly a cakewalk. It takes some brains to stay on top in that kind of cutthroat world. However, Roman's intelligence has some pretty glaring blind spots. For one, he tends to underestimate his opponents, especially Nate and Sully. A truly intelligent villain would recognize the threat they pose and take appropriate measures. Instead, Roman often falls into the classic bad guy trap of monologuing and giving his enemies chances to escape. Not exactly genius-level stuff there, buddy. Roman's greed often overrides his common sense. He's so focused on getting El Dorado that he ignores the obvious dangers and red flags along the way. A smarter man might have questioned why an entire colony of Spanish conquistadors mysteriously vanished, but not our boy Roman. He barrels ahead, letting his desire for wealth and power cloud his judgment. It's this lack of caution and foresight that ultimately leads to his downfall. Roman's got enough smarts to be dangerous, but not enough to outmaneuver our heroes or avoid his own destruction. He's like that one friend who's book smart but lacks street smarts, intelligent in some ways, but with some crucial blind spots that keep him firmly in the somewhat intelligent tier. Charlie Cutter, who lands comfortably in the somewhat intelligent tier. Now at first glance, you might be tempted to write Cutter off as just another muscle-bound bruiser. But our boy Charlie's got more going on upstairs than you might think. For starters, he's got a solid grasp of history and mythology that would put most university professors to shame. Remember how he rattled off all that info about Lawrence of Arabia and the Atlantis of the Sands? That's not the kind of knowledge you pick up from skimming Wikipedia, folks. What really sets Cutter apart, though, is his ability to think on his feet. He's not just book smart, he's got street smarts in spades. Whether he's improvising his way through a double cross or coming up with a quick plan to get out of a tight spot, Cutter's always got something up his sleeve. Plus, let's not forget his acting chops. The way he played Marlo and her goons. Oscar-worthy stuff right there. But his claustrophobia nearly derailed the whole operation in Syria, and he can sometimes be a bit too quick to resort to violence when a more subtle approach might work better. Still, when it comes to brains, Cutter's definitely punching above his weight class. Now let's talk about Atok Navarro, who falls squarely into the average intelligence category. Navarro's got some things going for him, sure. He's an experienced archaeologist with a decent understanding of history and artifacts. He knows enough about the El Dorado statue to recognize its true nature and potential value. Plus, he's smart enough to play the long game, pretending to be Roman's loyal employee while plotting to double-cross him. But here's the thing. For all his knowledge and planning, Navarro makes some pretty boneheaded moves. First off, he severely underestimates Nate and Elena. A smarter villain would have realized they were serious threats and dealt with them accordingly. Instead, Navarro keeps giving them chances to foil his plans. Not exactly genius-level strategy there, buddy. He's so focused on the power of El Dorado that he doesn't stop to consider the very real dangers it poses. And let's not forget his brilliant plan to sell the statue to the highest bidder. Did he really think he could control a bioweapon that wiped out an entire Spanish colony? That's not just unintelligent, that's Darwin Award territory. Now we've got Rafe Adler, another character who falls into the average intelligence bracket. Now, don't get me wrong, Rafe's not stupid. He's got enough smarts to be dangerous. He's well educated, with a good grasp of history and enough sense to hire experts like Nadine when he needs them. Plus, he managed to piece together the clues to Avery's treasure, which is no small feat. But Rafe's intelligence is constantly undermined by his massive ego and his inability to control his emotions. He's so obsessed with proving himself and outdoing the Drake brothers that he often makes rash, ill-considered decisions. Remember how he killed that guard in the Panama prison? Not exactly the actions of a cool, calculating mastermind. What really cements Rafe's place in the average tier is his lack of adaptability. He's got one plan, and when that plan starts to fall apart, he doesn't adjust. He just doubles down and gets angrier. A truly intelligent villain would be able to pivot and come up with new strategies on the fly. Instead, Rafe just throws money and muscle at his problems and hopes for the best. In the end, Rafe's like that kid in school who was born with a silver spoon and bought his way to good grades. He's got the resources and the basic knowledge, but he lacks the critical thinking skills and emotional intelligence to really make the most of them. It's almost tragic, really. With his wealth and connections, a smarter Rafe could have been a formidable adversary. Instead, he ends up as just another rich boy who bit off more than he could chew in the world of high-stakes treasure hunting. Now, let's talk about Samuel Drake, who slides smoothly into the intelligent tier. Sam's not just Nate's older brother. He's a walking, talking library of obscure historical facts and half-forgotten legends. This guy could probably beat Ken Jennings in a history-themed Jeopardy matchup. But Sam's intelligence goes beyond just being a trivia champion. He's got a knack for languages that would make a UN interpreter jealous, effortlessly switching between English, Spanish, and even some Latin when the situation calls for it. What really sets Sam apart is his ability to think laterally. When faced with a puzzle or a locked door, Sam doesn't just look for the obvious solution. He sees possibilities where others see dead ends. Remember how he MacGyvered his way out of that Panama prison? That's the kind of creative problem-solving you can't learn from books. Plus, let's not forget his silver tongue. Sam could probably talk a fish into buying a bicycle if he put his mind to it. His gift for persuasion and improvisation has gotten the Drake brothers out of more tight spots than a bottle of stain remover. But Sam's intelligence isn't without its blind spots. His impulsiveness and tendency to let his emotions drive his decisions sometimes lead him down paths a cooler head might avoid. Still, when it comes to brains, Sam's definitely playing in the big leagues. Ramesses. If brains were dynamite, this guy wouldn't have enough to blow his nose. Ramesses is the poster child for the dumb tier, making decisions so bad they'd make a lemming think twice. This is a guy who thought it was a good idea to keep Nate alive and relatively unguarded on a ship full of pirates. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. Ramesses' lack of intelligence isn't just about poor decision-making, though. He's got all the subtlety of a sledgehammer and the strategic thinking skills of a particularly dim goldfish. His entire plan seems to boil down to punch things until treasure appears. And let's not forget his brilliant idea to flood his own ship in an attempt to kill Nate. Newsflash, buddy. Ships are supposed to keep water out, not invite it in. He's not malicious, just not the sharpest cutlass in the pirate ship. Moving up a few notches on the IQ scale, we find Talbot in the somewhat intelligent tier. Talbot's like that honor roll student who's book smart but couldn't find his way out of a paper bag. But Talbot's intelligence has some pretty glaring blind spots. He's got all the emotional stability of a Jenga tower in an earthquake, letting his temper get the better of him at crucial moments. And for all his book smarts, Talbot's about as adaptable as a penguin in the Sahara. When his carefully laid plans go sideways, he tends to flail rather than pivot. It's like watching a chess player try to win a game of Twister. All that strategic thinking goes right out the window when he has to think on his feet. Finally, we reach the pinnacle of our intelligence pyramid with Katherine Marlowe, who earns her spot in the genius tier. Marlowe isn't just playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. She's inventing a whole new game that makes chess look like tic-tac-toe. This is a woman who can trace her organization's roots back to Queen Elizabeth I. That's not just longevity. That's playing the long game on a scale that would make Machiavelli sit up and take notes. Marlowe's genius lies in her ability to see the big picture while simultaneously managing the tiniest details. She's like a spider at the center of a web, feeling every vibration and adjusting her plans accordingly. Her knowledge spans history, psychology, and the occult, and she wields this information like a scalpel, dissecting her opponent's weaknesses with surgical precision. But what truly sets Marlowe apart is her understanding of power, not just how to get it, but how to keep it. She knows that true power isn't about brute force or even wealth. It's about control. Control of information, control of people, control of the narrative. In a world of treasure hunters focused on gold and glory, Marlowe's playing a whole different game, seeking the kind of power that doesn't tarnish or fade. Of course, even geniuses have their blind spots. Marlowe's adherence to tradition and her belief in her own superiority sometimes prevent her from seeing the threat posed by more unconventional opponents like Nate. But make no mistake, when it comes to brainpower in the Uncharted universe, Marlowe is in a league of her own. She's the kind of villain that makes you wonder if maybe, just maybe, the bad guys have a point after all. Now, let's talk about the man, the myth, the legend himself. Nathan Drake, who comfortably sits in the intelligent tier. Nate's not your average Tomb Raider with a pretty face and a knack for parkour. This guy's got a brain that works faster than his mouth. And that's saying something. Nate's like a walking, wisecracking Wikipedia of obscure historical facts, but with better hair and more gunfights. What sets Nate apart isn't just his encyclopedic knowledge of history and mythology. It's the way he connects dots that most people don't even see. He's like a human enigma machine, cracking codes and solving puzzles that have stumped scholars for centuries. And he does it all while dodging bullets and making quips that would make Indiana Jones jealous. But Nate's intelligence isn't just about book smarts. This guy's got street smarts that would make a New York cabbie look like a tourist. He can read people faster than most of us can read a menu, adapting his approach on the fly whether he's sweet-talking a stuffy museum curator or bluffing his way past a trigger-happy mercenary. And let's not forget his problem-solving skills. Nate can MacGyver his way out of situations that would make Houdini throw in the towel. Stuck in an ancient tomb with nothing but a lighter and a piece of gum. Give Nate 5 minutes and he'll not only escape, but probably discover a lost civilization in the process. Again, Nate's not perfect. His tendency to leap before he looks, sometimes literally, can land him in hot water. But even then, his quick thinking and adaptability usually save the day. In the world of Uncharted, Nate's not just surviving, he's thriving, thanks to that beautiful brain of his. Moving on, let's talk about Asav, who lands squarely in the average intelligence tier. Asav is like that guy at a party who's read one book on philosophy and now thinks he's Socrates. He's got just enough knowledge to be dangerous, but not enough wisdom to use it properly. On the surface, Asav seems pretty sharp. He's a former doctor turned rebel leader, so clearly, the guy's got some brain cells to rub together. He can quote ancient Indian texts and has a decent grasp of history and archaeology. Plus, he managed to build up a significant rebel movement, which takes at least some strategic thinking. But here's where Asav falls short. He's got all the flexibility of a steel girder. Once he's set on a course of action, wild horses, or in this case, a couple of wisecracking treasure hunters, couldn't drag him off it. He's so focused on his grand plan to restore the Hoysala Empire that he completely misses the forest for the trees. It's like watching a chess player so fixated on taking the opponent's queen that he doesn't realize he's about to be checkmated. Asav's also got a bad case of tunnel vision when it comes to his beliefs. He's so convinced of his own righteousness that he can't see the flaws in his logic. It's like he's playing a game of moral twister, contorting himself into knots to justify actions that are clearly harmful. In the end, Asav's intelligence is undermined by his inflexibility and his inability to see the bigger picture. He's smart enough to be a threat, but not smart enough to realize when he's fighting a losing battle. Now, let's dive down to the shallow end of the intelligence pool with Eddy Raja. If thoughts were dynamite, Eddy wouldn't have enough to blow his nose. This guy's elevator doesn't just not go to the top floor. It's stuck in the basement playing Candy Crush and forgetting why it got in there in the first place. Eddy's like that friend who always suggests robbing a bank when he's short on cash. All bravado, no brains. His entire strategy seems to be shoot first, ask questions never. He's got all the subtlety of a bull in a china shop and the strategic planning skills of a goldfish with ADD. This is a guy who brings a gang of pirates to a mystical island and is then surprised when things go sideways. It's like showing up to a black tie event in swim trunks and wondering why everyone's staring at you. Eddy's not just playing checkers while everyone else is playing chess. He's eating the checkers and complaining about the taste. Eddy Raja is proof that you don't need brains to be a memorable character. He's like a human embodiment of a hold my beer moment, entertaining to watch, but you wouldn't want him planning your escape route. Last but not least, we've got Zoran Lazarovich, another proud member of the dumb tier. Zoran's the kind of guy who'd bring a sledgehammer to a chess match and consider it a winning strategy. He's got all the subtlety of a freight train and the emotional intelligence of a brick. Now, I know what you're thinking. But wait, didn't Zoran manage to track down Shambhala when no one else could? Well, yes, but that's like praising a bull for finding the china shop. Sure, he got there, but the method was all brute force and no finesse. Zoran's approach to problem solving is simple. If it doesn't work, use more guns. If that doesn't work, use bigger guns. It's like watching a caveman try to open a laptop. What really showcases Zoran's lack of smarts is his complete inability to learn from, well, anything. This is a guy who watches his men get turned into blue rage monster zombies and thinks, yep, that's definitely the kind of power I want to chug. It's like seeing your friend get food poisoning from gas station sushi and then ordering a double portion for yourself. But perhaps the crowning jewel of Zoran's idiocy is his monumental lack of self-awareness. He genuinely believes he's some kind of misunderstood great man, destined for the history books. Spoiler alert, Zoran. Local man too angry to die fails anyway isn't the kind of headline that gets you in the history books. At least, not the way you're hoping. And we are done. And I know some of you are straight up running in the comments to tell me where I messed up. And that's all right. This is how a community works. Subscribe to the channel and thanks for watching.